Let's see if it works this time. All right, one capo. Hey, Andrew. All right, we're trying it on my channel now. I'm trying to get Cali on. All right, it says adding. I hope y'all can hear me because it just sounds like dead air. And I got the fan on. All right. It
Peace,
sounds
peace. We still
normal
got the
now.
echo.
Yeah,
We good?
I think so. I got to try to put my thing back in this holder. Okay.
Okay. I don't see nothing on my page, so I don't know how to share this. I don't know how to do it. And I don't see nothing. Do you see the chat? Is there a chat?
Yeah, I see the chat, but I don't understand why you
You
don't
can
see
see it?
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it either. But hey, it's all good. It's all good. We won't worry about that.
Okay.
As long as you can see the chat, I'm sure they'll come in the chat and ask their questions and say what they got to say. You
Mm,
feel what I'm saying? So,
right.
you know,
Okay.
you ready?
Yeah, I'm good. You can start with the questions that you had.
Yeah, peace, everybody, man. Check this out. This is my sister Tasha. We definitely been talking about some things, man. There's been a lot of questions going on in the indigenous community and in the what we call the conscious community, the Pan-African community, and I wanted to bring the sister on so she could answer some questions that a lot of us have leaving Pan African or even as a Pan African.
Right.
Like I was telling people, my cousin is Rakito Slim Bull. You feel what I'm saying? A lot of you know him on both sides of the fence.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very brilliant mind. You feel what I'm saying? But that's my younger cousin, and he's helped me walk through our family tree, and learn who we really are. You feel what I'm saying? And he's
Okay.
even offered that help to not just our family but other families. And we get a lot of backlash. Those of us who uh, find our truth, and we stand on our truth, and especially if we used to be with the Pan African, we
Mm-hmm.
were believing the whole out of Africa theory and all of this, and
Right.
everything, right? Everything we were taught in school, everything we didn't dig deeper to find our truth. So why I wanted to bring you on is because, like I told you, you have a great YouTube channel where you
Mm-hmm.
you teach very well, and I and
Thank
and
you.
it caught me. It caught me, and we kind of been friends for a hot little second. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? We've been friends on here.
Yeah.
I just think the universe works in time for us to connect. Um, I wanted to bring you on to have a conversation. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want this to turn into, in the comments, I don't want this to turn into anything disrespectful. You
No.
can disagree. You can ask your questions. Tasha is here willing to answer any questions she can answer. Like I said, I wanted to stay respectful. You can disagree, but all the name calling and all of that, we
Mm-hmm.
do not need. This is a intelligent conversation that we want to have with both sides of the fence.
Right. Right.
So Tasha, for my viewers, for
Mm-hmm.
for 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 my
Are your
viewers,
viewers? Did you share it on your page so they can see it?
I
I don't.
can't see.
Yeah.
No, but this goes automatically on my page though.
Okay. Yeah, because I
It goes
see.
automatically. Did you tag me?
Yeah, I think so. Let me make
Cause see,
sure.
I can't see anything. I can't see anything over here. I
Okay.
don't see anything on my screen. I just see me and you. That's it. I don't know. I don't see anything to share. I don't see the chat. I don't
That's
see anything.
weird. Yeah, because you used to be able to see all these things.
Maybe it's because we have it landscape.
I
But
don't
if
know.
there's anybody, I don't know if anybody's in here. You know what? You know what? Hold on. I got you.
Maybe you can
Um,
get Rick to
I'm
share
gonna
it.
use my other. I'm gonna use my other phone,
Okay.
and I'm gonna share it. But if there's anyone in here who has questions for the sister, she says she is willing to answer the questions. Um, okay, it looks like some people are already sharing
And
it.
y'all
So
don't
let
have to
me.
be Pan Africans to ask the genealogy questions either.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I see you. I see you now. So let me start
Okay.
sharing it. Okay, got you. Um, share the groups. Um, give me 1 second.
hmm
Let me just.
Yeah, because I saw a lot of people that was on your page is not on here right now. So I don't know if they got
Okay,
kind of lost because we kept
let me
having to reconnect. So.
let me make sure it's on my main page first. Here we go.
hmm
Live with Tasha. Um, and for the people on my page, right? Um,
Ro, what does that
I
mean?
wanna let you. Huh?
She said Facebook equals 11, Cali equals 0. What does that mean, Ro? I don't
Oh,
understand.
because I'm a videographer too.
Oh,
I'm a
okay.
videographer too. So she's saying I know everything about the cameras and stuff, but I can't win on Facebook.
Oh,
She's saying Facebook beat me.
they doing
That's my
something.
girl Roro.
They did
Okay,
something.
I see the chat now though.
Okay, I
I
see
see the
more
chat
people
now.
in. You see it? Okay. So you can see it on your other
Yeah, I
phone.
see. I'm looking at the chat from my phone. So
Okay.
um for the people who's coming in on my from my side, right?
Lito.
I want to let Tasha introduce herself and explain who she is and what she does, and also we can. I'm going to bring some topics to her
Mm-hmm.
that we encounter over on my side. You know, because like I said, I'm kind of like the bridge
Right.
between the indigenous and the Pan Africans.
Right.
You feel what I'm saying? So there's a lot of questions that we hear go on this side, and I wanted to bring you on so you can address some of those topics. Also, I have some comments that people were making in some of the posts,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to read get to that saying. So
Right.
right
Mm-hmm.
now, Tasha, let them know who you are. Thank you for having me on.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Thank you. Well, I'm Tasha. Basically, I do a lot of indigenous history research, genealogy research. Been doing my family's genealogy since two. I'm getting a phone call. My brother keeps calling me. But yeah, I've been doing my family genealogy since 2006. Probably before that, because my great grandmother, she was like getting ill, and we were talking about it because she had told me the family history years ago, and she wanted me to write a book like Alex Haley. I still haven't done it, but write a book like Alex Haley did on our family. Um,
right.
and she was the one that told me that we went for Africa, because I used to be obsessed with Alex Haley when I was little, and I came to her because I saw her as the darkest person in the family. And you know how they have how the roots thing is like that person had to be African or know something. So I came to her and asked her who in our family was from Africa, and she laughed at me. She was like, we are from Africa, baby. And she started telling me the migration story of our family, um, coming up more recently, coming up from Mexico to the Virginia area. And then before that, before we were in Mexico, we were in South America and Canada, and different parts of the family came together in Mexico. And then, from that, I was like, yeah, she sound crazy. Like, we ain't no Mexicans. but but when I actually went and did the research, when I asked like history professors and things, they kind of told me on the low that yeah, indigenous groups did migrate up from Mexico, and they told me to look into the Olmecs. They're like, look at the Olmecs. So I found out that the Olmecs are the She, are also called the She people. That's XI, spelled
Okay.
XI. And I started doing more research into that. And so before she passed away, she told me that story, and I just thought it was crazy. And like before that, she had told us about us being from Mexico. Me and my brother used to joke about. We laughed at it. We're like, we're not Mexicans. Like we're Mexicans. We don't look like quote unquote Mexicans, you know. But yeah, and it wasn't like when she said that we aren't Africans. She was like, those are beautiful people, but those just that's not our
Not us.
culture. That's It wasn't like a disrespect, like like it's something wrong with being African. That
Right.
wasn't the case. Like a lot of people, some of the Pan Africans are saying that we are doing it out of self hate, but that's not what it is.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
So definitely this these are things I wanted to get into with you
Mhm.
because like you said, I think there's a lot of misconception going on. We're hearing that there's a lot of division
Right.
going on with us. And for me, I had to ask a sister yesterday, like, where's the division coming from?
Right.
Are you paying attention to where the division is coming from?
Mhm.
Are you paying attention to what's being said?
Right.
So what I'm saying is, um, we have a lot of people telling us who we are and who we are not.
Exactly.
You get what I'm saying? And
Exactly.
it's become you. What I'm saying is, I can't keep telling you you're a hoe or you're a deadbeat dad.
Mhm.
You get what I'm saying? I can't keep telling you something like this.
Mhm.
And there's information out here to discredit that, to
Right.
disprove, to you feel what I'm saying?
Right.
But I keep telling you that anyway. No, you are this.
Right.
No, you are this. And there's actually information here that refutes that. You feel what I'm saying?
Right.
At some point in time, it's going to become disrespectful.
Mhm. Yes.
You
Exactly.
get what I'm saying? At some
Exactly.
point in time, it's going to be disrespectful.
Mhm.
And the only reason I use those analogies is because I have to use something that hits hard. You,
Right.
you get what I'm saying? For you
Yeah.
to understand how disrespectful it becomes when you keep telling us who we are and who we're not. Um,
Mhm.
so some of the things I wanted to ask you about, and these are some of the things I just wanted you to kind of touch on what you can, wherever
Yeah.
you want to go with it.
Mhm.
And I'm sure they'll be asking questions in the comments. So one of the things I hear is I hear Pan Africans always say Native Americans when they refer to the Aboriginal and Indigenous community.
Mhm.
Is there a difference in the terms or between Native Americans and Aboriginals? What would be the correct term to use when addressing the
Mhm.
indigenous community? Things like that.
Well, yeah, there's a difference. Native American, that term is fairly new, and there's a lot of Is the stigma with it, and then there's a lot of undercutting with it as well. Um, but because honestly, everyone who lives and who is born in American are Native American, right? And there also used to be a Native American party, which consisted of only European people. And
Okay.
a lot of these people can't, to be honest, a lot of people calling themselves Native Americans, they consider themselves very mixed. And they like to say that we are all mixed, but I don't believe we are all mixed people. So they use the term Native American instead of indigenous and instead of American Indian. Now, American Indian are the people who are on the treaties, who are on the laws. So American Indian would be the proper legal term, or Aboriginal, because the Aboriginal
Okay.
people are documented in Scholarly primary source documents say Aboriginals. Like the history of certain areas, or the the history of the Aboriginal people of like Tennessee or Virginia. If you look up those old, really old books, they consider people Aboriginal and Indian in those. We know that those are just general terms. It's not the proper term, because people came from hundreds, at least over 500 different nations and tribes in the area. So essentially, it's like a blanket term.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
I got you. So I'm just trying to go through some of the things that were brought to me. You've been on my page. You've
Yeah.
been on my page, and you've seen a lot of the comments and things like that. So I'm just going through some of the things that I pulled out that I feel like we should discuss. Yesterday, or it might have been early this morning. So I'm talking to a sister, and she was asking me. Basically, she was asking me, what benefits do we get as being indigenous to this land, versus Africans, or
Right.
because this is the thing. I'm trying to figure out, what do we get out of being African here?
If you claim to be African, there's actually an amendment saying that you aren't a citizen, that you aren't a full human being, actually, which is kind of crazy. Also, with
Now, Tasha,
claiming
this
to,
is nothing you're making up, though, right?
no,
This is
you can
nothing
look
you're
all this
making up.
up.
This is actual
I
documents,
mean, the
right?
Pan Africans themselves bring up, what was it? Is it the 13th or the 14th Amendment?
You're right,
Talking about
right.
legalized slavery, and the whole Dred. If you look at the Dred Scott case as well, they say people
No, you're right.
who claim to be of African descent aren't considered citizens of the United States.
Gotcha. So what?
Um,
Okay.
so what was the other
So what
question?
I'm so the question was the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
What are there benefits once you find out that you're from this land that you can claim? How does that work? Like, what I'm saying, versus you being African. How does an African get benefits? You get what I'm saying? Like, are there benefits for an African once they find out?
I mean, that's why I tell people do their genealogy. You don't know what type of, what heritage you have. I mean, I wouldn't be trying to look for benefits. Like, I mean, based off your heritage. But if you would like to join or enroll in a tribe, there's certain benefits that each individual tribe has. And some
That's what I'm.
tribes,
That's what
yeah,
I'm.
some tribes
I
don't
think
have
that's what
any
I'm asking.
benefits at all. Like if you're in a Cherokee band, the Cherokee actually have a corporation. Cherokee Nation is actually a corporation, and they have businesses. I think it's called the Cherokee Nation Incorporated, and they receive checks. Everybody splits those profits with the rest of the tribe. Now, say the tribe that my great grandmother that I told you guys about earlier, the tribe that she's from, the Mattapanai, they don't have any benefits at all. They're basically living like a third world country. So you can't really say, I want to be an American Indian to get benefits, because everybody doesn't get
What?
benefits. Because and that's
Yeah, because
another
this was a
thing that they
question that was
say.
asked to me.
Yeah.
That was a question that was asked to me yesterday. Like, what benefits do you get from being from this land? You know what I'm saying? Or
Well,
But my thing is,
there
go
could
ahead.
be benefits if we all organize as an indigenous or Aboriginal group to try to reparate some of the land and resources that was taken from us. Now, you can't reparate or honestly give reparations as claiming to be an African, right? If Africans were getting reparations, those would go to African nations, because reparations only go to nations. So if you're claiming to be an African in America trying to get reparations, Ghana's going to get those reparations, Nigeria, people that you don't even know. Those people are going to get the reparations, not you. So you have to go about it a different way. And that's the only thing that
Yeah.
the problem that I have with ADOS. They're claiming to be descendants of slaves, but you're not a nation. That's why the Japanese got reparations and the quote unquote African Americans did not. Where is African, like you said, where is African America? Where is that,
Yeah.
like where is that nation that you can receive benefits from the government? Because governments give benefits to other governments. If y'all
Right.
understand, that's, y'all can look
So,
up all this information. It's out there for you.
right, and that's my thing. That's one of the things I'm telling people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, you actually came on my page, and you offered this. I didn't, this is nothing I put together. I was just curious to
Right.
ask if you could find, if you as a Pan African,
Mm-hmm.
if someone offered to help you do your genealogy and learn your family, find out who's in your family, trace your family back, would
Mm-hmm.
you accept that offer?
Yeah, and
And I had a lot of people hit my list, hit that post up saying, yes, I'm with it, I'm with it.
but
But
they
then I
didn't reach
talked to
out.
you and you like,
Yeah, I checked my message and I had a couple of more people, maybe three or four people, more people reach out after your video last night. So, I mean, some people are interested and some people might have African ancestry. I'm not saying that people don't. Like,
no, and
if
that's,
you claim
you're
to be
right.
African, wouldn't you want proof that you are African? Wouldn't you want to know the nation that,
Right.
or the ship the person came on, or whatever? Like, some of the Africans came over here as free people. They weren't. That's why the whole slave narrative is wrong. If you go back to Jamestown and after that 1626 thing with the 20 odd Negroes, there was African people coming here to Keokatan and area in towns in that area of the I guess not Roanoke. That would be, I guess, the Chesapeake area. There was actual free Africans coming as passengers on these ships. And that's what they don't ever talk
Hmm.
about. They make up this fake slave narrative and everything. There was no slaves that came here in 1626. All those people were free people, and they worked as indentured servants as the Europeans did, and some of them were actually indigenous Europeans, which were melanated and had looked like us. And those people
Hmm.
became free after they did their little 7 years or whatever, and they have land grants. If you look up all that stuff, a lot of people on the land grants documents that you find in Virginia at the Library of Virginia, they were not pale, quote unquote, white people. Some of them were
Hmm.
dark skinned, like look like us, Europeans, or free Africans or free Indians.
And I think I just watched. I think last night I was watching your video,
Mm-hmm.
where you were at the Library of Congress, and
Mm-hmm.
you were talking about the slave ships and the
Yeah.
numbers being off. And can you touch on that a little bit? Can you, what you were saying in that video, if you
Mm-hmm.
remember?
Yeah, from the research that I did there, that's probably like a year ago. From the research that I did there, I'm seeing these people on the ships. They were like, one ship had like one girl on it coming from Africa,
Hmm.
and then there was other ships with like low amounts of people. They try to make it like they cram like 500 people on a ship, and they all made it here, and
That's what
nobody
they showed.
died.
That's what they taught us in school.
But that
They
didn't
taught us
happen.
that in school,
If you look at the actual
right?
documents, that
They
don't
taught us
happen.
that in the movies.
Yeah,
That's how they taught us in the movies, right?
like maybe on average around 50 to 100 people at the most were passengers. They're listed as passengers on these ships. Um, Many of the ships are domestic people taking people from New England, New York, coming down to the Chesapeake Bay area, and then coming from down there to South Carolina to New Orleans. So they were moving a lot of the indigenous people around. Most of the ships, most of the logs of the ships are showing them moving indigenous people around. It's not like everyone,
Hmm.
like they only show only Africans, but it's mostly the indigenous people being moved around. And you can look up
Yeah.
all this
So
information. And even the ships, some of the
right.
ships are called the Indian Queen. They have names after some tribes. If you look up these names.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all. That's really all this live is about right now. You get what I'm
Right.
saying? That's really all of this live is about.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of insulting us, instead
Research.
of coming at us, the information is there. Like, who's going to go look for the information? The
Right.
same way I asked you guys, hey, this sister is willing to do your genealogy.
Mm-hmm.
She came on and said she's willing to do. So my point is this: the information is there.
Yes. They're not hiding
Who
the
wants it?
information, but you know that's like the saying says. What do you know? How do you hide information from a Negro? You put it in the book. They act like people are acting like there is this big conspiracy to hide the information from us. No, they're in the libraries.
Yeah,
They're
and
actually
the
on the
thing is,
internet
what I'm
now.
telling people, yeah, and what I'm telling people is, for us, the truth is not going to fall in our lap.
Right.
It's not just going to fall in our lap, y'all. We got to go get this information. We got to, like, it just baffles me. Like, we say we want truth, but
Mm-hmm.
this, for me, this is like religion all over again. You know what I'm saying? For many of us who walked away from religion after
Right.
doing more deeper research,
Right.
I get it. I wasn't ready to accept Jesus. Wasn't Listen, I wasn't ready to accept all that either.
Mm-hmm.
But after you start to do more research and many of us came to the conclusion, hey, something ain't right.
Yeah.
You feel what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And that's the same thing. We can't think they would just lie to us about religion and wouldn't think they wouldn't lie to us about our history.
Everything. Right. Everything. And it's all in the
You know,
books.
it's so much, like I was saying yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember my grandmother and my daddy telling me we were Indian, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? We had Indian in us, right?
Right.
But I ignored them. I
Mm-hmm.
ignored them. Why? Because I was in school every day being taught roots,
Yep.
being taught we came from Africa. They're showing roots in all these slave movies on TV every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Every year. You
Right.
get what I'm saying? So I'm ignoring my own family
Mm-hmm.
because this is what's being brainwashed into us from school.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So this is what I'm trying to tell people. At some point in time, we got to look deeper than what we were taught in
Yes,
school.
we do.
You feel what I'm
We
saying?
do
We got
our
to look
research.
deeper.
Right.
So, and that's what I mean by when I say it's not going to fall in our lap.
No. And then
You have people like Tasha who is
mm-hmm.
actually going out to these places. Actually, no, leaving the house, not behind the
Mm-hmm.
computer, not on the internet, going to these libraries. You feel what I'm
Right.
saying? Going to check these records. You have people who are actually doing this. They're not sitting in front of a master teacher who's telling them, hey, we all come from here. She's going to these places. You
Right.
get what I'm saying? That's what I mean about this stuff is not going to fall in our lap. Once you start finding out who your family
Mm-hmm.
is, start going to these places to
Right.
find out about your family.
And then
You
another
know,
thing,
and I don't mean no disrespect
right.
to anyone, but if we say we really want the truth, do we really want the truth?
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? I went, Tasha, I was on it too, Tasha.
Mm-hmm.
Africa, hey, Black Power, I was on it too.
But you know
You feel
what?
what I'm
You
saying?
know what really brought me over to this side was talking to actual African people and talking to their
Yes.
elders. Now, if you talk to
Talking to the
West
elders. Yes,
African
Tasha.
elders, if you talk to any West
Yes.
African elders from these tribes, they will tell you that their people aren't indigenous to Africa, or at least not to West Africa. A lot of those people come from Asia and migrated, or from the Middle East and migrated to West Africa.
Mm,
And most of this
mm,
happened within the last, 2,000 or 1,000 years. A lot of those tribes that are in West Africa now came with the invasion of Islam. They're not even native there. The indigenous people of
mm.
Africa are mostly pygmy people, and they weren't the same people that are here today. And and that's something that they don't talk about. A lot of them killed off the
Right.
indigenous people of West Africa, or they mixed in with
Right.
them. They don't look the same as those people that was there.
Mm,
A lot of people came in from the east and the Sudan or the Nubian invasion. Like our people were taught over here that Nubians were this and good and that. The Nubians killed millions of indigenous people in Africa. You
yeah.
know, there's a lot of stuff that they don't talk about.
And they're
Just
not going to talk about it.
yeah. And then there's videos like I brought up this issue a while ago, and Safa Karu, he actually found videos of interviewing these African elders saying that they came from somewhere else. They're not from originally from West Africa. So there's videos out there showing these people talk. You have to talk to the actual people. And I actually
To
went
the
to,
actual people.
yeah, like I went to this Nigerian party with a couple of friends. It's probably maybe two quote unquote African American friends, and my ex husband was with me there. But me and my closest friend, they were asking us, "Are you guys Native Americans?" That's what they called us. Like, are y'all American Indians? They were like, "You," to my ex husband, "you look like you could be part Nigerian, but the rest of them, they look American Indian." And
Wow.
they were asking us like what, who are our people and what tribes we came from or whatever. And I told them what my grandmother said, but I still, like, at that time, this was years ago, so at that time I was still kind of in denial. But it was like I kind of went by the one drop rule because I had always claimed to be
Yeah.
85 to 75% American Indian because that's what I had been told. But it's like, okay, I'm American Indian, but I'm still black. That's my mindset then. I don't really consider myself quote unquote black, but I mean socially yes, but I don't use that term
Right.
anymore. But
Right.
that's how a lot of people think.
We
Like,
get it.
we're going by the one drop rule. You still whatever. You still nigga, as they say.
Yeah.
Even if you
Yeah.
got whatever else in your family or any other cultures.
I mean,
But
and we
it's like
get
the
that.
Nigerian people told us straight up, y'all different. Like, y'all not us. Like, what tribe are y'all from? But like I said, some people do have African ancestry. And like my ex-husband, they asked him,
True.
like, are you,
True.
1/4 Nigerian, or are you partially Nigerian? Because, he probably does have that ancestry. And I don't think his family has done their full genealogy yet. You said ex-husband. My
And
cousin messing with me. Yes,
but see,
ex-husband.
Tasha,
Hmm.
but see, Tasha, this is what I was talking to the sister
Yeah.
about yesterday about about the division, right?
Right.
Because just like you're saying, there are some of you who do have African in you. You
Exactly.
feel what I'm saying?
Exactly.
We are not saying you
Don't.
don't,
And we're
but
not telling you who you are.
it's you telling us
Right.
that we are you.
Exactly.
You get what I'm saying? And we're telling you we are not you. You are you.
Exactly.
Yes, you have some African in you. Fine.
Mhm.
We don't fault you for having African in you. But you're disrespecting us and you're, you know what I'm saying,
Mhm.
telling us what we have and who we are.
But it,
That's where the division comes in.
but even when you sit down with these Pan Africans and ask them about their family, they do admit to having American Indian ancestry.
In Thank you.
So it's like
Tasha, I do that a lot of times.
I
I
haven't
tell
met
you,
any
what is your
that has not had American Indian ancestry.
right? And I asked them that question. Like, I remember one time I did a post. I think I went all day long doing
Mhm.
this one question, and I had people go back to your family and ask your grandmothers, if your grandmothers are still living. Ask them, did you have Indian in you or did
Mhm.
you have African in you? Man, that post has to be still up on my page because I don't
Exactly.
delete too much of nothing.
Yeah.
But that post, people started coming back and they were like, "Yo, I do have Indian.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?" And I'm like, that's what I'm trying to tell you guys.
Exactly.
Ask the questions.
Find out
Ask the
for
questions.
sure. Right.
I get it. We went to school. They taught us we come from Africa. I get
Mhm.
it. But we was also taught, as some of us was also taught Santa Claus was real too at one point. Some of us
Yeah.
was also taught the Tooth Fairy was real at some point
Yeah.
too. Like,
Yeah.
when did you stop believing in that? Once you started to realize some things were wrong, some things were not adding up. But what I was saying yesterday was a lot of us left religion. A lot of
Mhm.
us left religion just following what somebody was saying because somebody was saying it, and we moved it right over into what we so-called call the conscious community. And this
Mhm.
is the same thing we're doing. We're
Yep.
following something somebody else is telling us
Exactly.
without, how do you know
Without
more about
facts.
Egypt than you know about your own family tree? So
Mhm.
that was one of the things that hit me. For me.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? For me. Then a lot of other stuff started to come back. Like, oh, wait a minute, Grandma did used to say who was Indian. Then I remember my dad saying, I don't put black on my. I remember my dad saying, I never put black. And then my mama was saying, I never put black on my. You know what I'm saying? Like, these conversations started coming back. And I started saying, whoa, hold on, wait a minute. And then, like I was telling you yesterday, a couple years ago, I had ran across a Dane Calloway video. And that video, it like, I turned that video off because it was making too much sense to me. And I didn't want to hear that. No, we're from Africa. No. That's where I was at. I turned that brother off for about 2 years. I ran from that dude's video.
Yeah.
And them videos came right back around. And his videos led me to somebody else, to led me to you, then led me to somebody else, then led me. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I had the same experience
with
Carrie Davis videos. I saw a Carrie Davis video back in
Carrie Davis.
What was it, 2011, 12? And you know, it was like, okay, like, you know, this is the stuff that my grandma told me, like, should I look more into it? And it was kind of like, no, you know, I was kind of getting more into the Egyptian stuff because I still like Egyptian stuff, you know. I was getting more into that, and I was like, I don't know, but, you know, I'm going to come back to it and whatever. And I just said, I'm going to do my own research on it because I had already been encouraged by professors to do, you know, look into American Indian history because they were saying that there's, you know, a lot of people not into that, and they're not researching it, and it's so much resources out here. That's what they were trying to tell me. So you guys can find all that stuff in the library.
And what I was saying yesterday, Tasha, was the truth don't care. The truth does not care whether you're ready for it or not. The truth does not care whether you like the way it looks or not. You get what I'm saying? The truth a lot of times does not come pretty. But just because it doesn't appeal to you does not mean it's still not the truth. You get what I'm saying? So I think a lot of us are at the point of, same way we were in religion, cognitive dissonance kicking in. Because things can be shown to us right in our face. Your family can sit here and tell you, you don't know nothing about no African.
And then
but you're going to keep telling your family, no, we're African. Grandma, we're African. Hey, Grandma. You get what I'm saying? And your grandma is like, no. What? Slave trade? What? Slave trade are you talking about?
And then there's still family members that deny it, even when we had family members born on reservations. They're still trying to say that we look a certain way because we got African. And then they don't know who. I'm like, I've done the genealogy on that branch, and there's nobody African. So who is this person that you claim? And like, when did they come here and where did they come from? They don't have any answers. And that's what I be. That's one thing I do. I be asking those questions, like, just like I be asking, like, if you was to get deported out of here today or tomorrow, where are you going? Exactly.
Where are you going? Where are you going in Africa?
Find
Who do you know in Africa?
I mean,
what's your next of kin? You should know this, right?
Yeah, if you claim to be
because you
African.
never know what's going to happen.
Yes, you need to do your genealogy. This, right? Yeah, it's if you claim to be African, that's that's your business. But have the proof and find out the name of the ancestor who came. Some people can actually find those people,
trace it back,
and then many of us can trace ourselves back to Indian chiefs and people on reservations. So don't try to discredit somebody else, from the stuff that we're finding, because some of us actually done the work.
Right. That's real. Tasha, so a little more into that conversation I was having with the sister last night. She asked the question. She said, her question was, what happened to the people from this land? If she's saying, what happened to the people from this land that they're at the bottom with the slaves that came over, is what she was saying.
So who came
How
over?
did they take over the people of this land? Basically, she's
Well,
saying, how did
once
we?
you get into the history and read the books, if you go, oh, did your mic cut off? You still there?
My mic cut
Oh,
off.
okay, there it is.
I hear you. You're
Yeah.
breaking up.
Oh, I don't know what that is. Is that better? That sound okay?
You cool with me?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you go into the history of the colonial period, you will see what happened to the indigenous people of this land. And they will tell you in these books that these people were enslaved. There's a book called The Strenuous Puritan that's about New England and the Plymouth plantation. Now we're taught about the Pilgrims and them coming over from England to New England and all this happy fake stuff, and they're escaping religious persecution. But when they came here, they basically tricked a lot of the indigenous people. Plymouth plantation is actually built on top of an old Algonquian town. That Squanto used to be a member of that tribe. Now, if you look at the history of Squanto, you will see that he was a slave. He was
Mm-hmm.
taken from his land in New England and taken over to Europe, to several different places in Europe, and he was enslaved there for years. Now, somehow he got on a boat and came back here to America, and that's why he was able to communicate with them, because he knew English and Latin and probably other languages. Um, but right there, that's showing you that Squanto was a slave. Okay, so all the slaves were not African. Other people from his villages were enslaved as well, and then some people died off. Now, if you look into
Mm.
all of the Indian wars, you will see that most of the people were not killed in those wars. Many of them were taken and enslaved. And a lot of the times it wasn't the Europeans enslaving them, it was other rival Indian tribes enslaving their
Right.
rivals and
Right.
selling them for trinkets, for tomahawk, medals and things and beads to the Europeans.
A lot of the same thing that went on with the Africans,
Yeah,
and a lot of the same thing that's going on today in modern time.
exactly. So
Same thing.
once you research the Indian slave trade, stuff is going to make sense. They kind of try to downplay it, but when you start looking into local history, you will see more proof. There's also a book from my nation, the Powhatan Nation, specifically in Mattapanai. They did a history called "The True Story of Pocahontas." So they did a story of Pocahontas.
I
In that,
saw that.
yeah, in that book,
I saw
they
that.
talk about how many, or probably the majority of the people were enslaved here, and others ran away and joined other tribes, or they became free people of color. Many of our ancestors were free people of color and not enslaved. That's why you got to do your genealogy. A lot of people walking around with this inferiority complex about, this victim thing, that we were all slaves and we come from slaves, so ain't no point of doing nothing. I've heard people say these crazy things, but a lot of people weren't enslaved. That's where you got to do your genealogy and know who was in your bloodline. Everybody doesn't have the same story.
And
Okay.
we looked at me and my cousin Rakito. We looked at our family, and we
Mm-hmm.
didn't have any slaves in our family.
Exactly.
We didn't
Exactly.
have any slaves. No, man. We did. We had. I think our fourth or fifth great grandmother or something. She had a passport and everything.
Mm.
Like she was traveling.
She
You
was.
get what I'm saying?
Right.
So this is what I'm saying. Like we didn't have no slaves in our family.
Mm-hmm.
But we did that. We went in our family and found this out, though.
Right. Right.
We went in our family and found this out. Me and that brother sat there and we went through our family. And this is what we're now doing. We're getting in touch with our other family members, and we're starting to bring all of this to the light. Like,
Exactly.
hey, y'all, listen, grandma was right. And
Mm-hmm.
granddad was right. Listen, Virginia, they went up to Virginia. They from down here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my cousin said we went 7 generations back.
Oh, okay, that's good.
You see what
That's
I'm
what they
saying?
they don't talk about that. They don't. They never. You notice that they don't have any movie. What's the movie about free people of color? They don't want you to know about free people of color because most of their roots go back to indigenous Americans. A lot of those families
Yeah.
are indigenous. The Chavis, the Gibsons, Andersons. There's a whole bunch of different groups that are indigenous American groups, and they had to, for their protection, take on a Christian identity, you know, and they had to become free people of color
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
disown their tribes. You know, they took on that Christian identity that a lot of us still have for protection, because there was a rule at one time that you couldn't make Christian people slaves. Now, up in
Yeah.
New England, we're going back to New England, there's a group called the Praying Indians. Those people became Christians to protect themselves during the wartime. There's Pequot Wars. There was other battles going on where the Europeans were taking people and enslaving them. Now, those praying Indians were not, for the most part. Some of them were enslaved, but for the most part, they were not enslaved because they became Christians. And actually, the first Bible created in America was written in the Algonquian language, which is an Indian language.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if all the slaves were African, why would they use the Bible in the Algonquian language to turn the slaves into Christians after that law, after they did away with the law that said that if you're a Christian, you can slave? They said you can enslave Christians who are not white, basically. So after that, they kind of went more in full force with conditioning people to become Christian because they felt the Christians were more docile. They gave people, it's not disrespect to that religion, but personally for me, but it
Yeah.
gave people an objective like, okay, we're not going to get heaven on earth. We're going to get heaven when we die. So uh,
Right.
we got to take care of our earthly masters while we're here, and we'll be promised something when we're not here anymore in heaven. So those first Bibles were in the Algonquin language. So that's kind of
Yes.
giving you
Yes.
a clue who a lot of the slaves were, especially in the colonial period before they were importing um, Africans and more numbers. Now, the importation, if you look up the actual numbers, the importation of Africans didn't really begin like that until like what, the late 1700s, early 1800s, and then it was banned in what, 1808. So it's a small period of
Mm.
time that they legally could bring in Africans. And really, how many people can you bring in illegally? Um, the scholarly numbers for the people who came here from Africa, who are imported, period, that survived, so who got off the ships, is around 252,000 people. So how can
Mm.
they say that there are what, 40 to 80 million quote unquote African Americans? How can 40 to 80 million African Americans come only from African people? And then of those
Mm.
people who got off the ship, the majority of them were little boys and teenage boys. There's
Mm.
probably only, out those
That's
numbers,
big.
like around 33 to 35,000 females. And most of those were like preteen girls. They wanted to get the children so they can condition them and take them out of their tribal history so they can become
Yes, ma'am.
slaves for life,
Yes,
basically.
ma'am.
They can mold you. If you got
Yes,
children,
ma'am.
you can tell them anything. So
You can
if you
tell them
look back,
anything. Yes.
so looking back at the book I told you about, the true history of Pocahontas, the chief who wrote the book, our chief Costello, he mentioned how they would kidnap our children and like the older women so that they can condition them. You can control a woman more than a man. And the children, you can tell them anything. You can tell little children, Powhatan children, Indian children, that they are from Africa. And they wouldn't know because they don't have their parents or anyone there with them. They split the people up, they mix them around. I mean, you can give them any type of story that you want to if you're taking children.
Yeah. I mean, that's how they do us. They get us young.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's with a lot of things.
Yeah.
That's with a lot of things.
Yeah.
So, one thing I wanted to ask you, so at this point, the question came up. Well, the statement came up
Mm-hmm.
on a post. that science has proved that all life started in Africa.
Okay.
Um, I think Lucia was mentioned.
Yeah,
Um,
Lucy, right?
so this is where the Pan Africans throw this out there. All human life started in Africa. The original man comes from Africa.
Okay, well, I'll say this. What does the actual indigenous African say? Because not one indigenous African tribe says that all people came from Africa. No indigenous tribes anywhere says that their ancestors came from Africa. So where you gonna believe these people who are guessing? A lot of these out of Africa is a theory. They're guessing. They had an out of Asia theory before that. They had an out of Australia theory, and now I remember what was it last year that they try to say that people might have originated in Europe, and it kind of pissed a lot of Pan Africans off. So are you going to believe people with theories or actually talk to the actual
Right.
indigenous Africans?
People.
It's like they want a certain narrative, but then they don't, they want to be from Africa, but you don't want to talk to the actual traditional African people. Maybe some of these westernized African people would agree with it, but the traditional people don't. They don't believe
Yeah.
everybody's from them. And but all of the indigenous melanated people across the world, we were all the indigenous people of this planet before the Europeans put these borders together and separated us. It wasn't like we hate you over here or there. People had their rivals, but it wasn't like they hated someone because they're across the water or whatever. Right?
So where does the whole all life comes from Africa?
We're, they're going
Where
off
it
with
comes
Lucy, the finding of Lucy, which was not even a modern human being. She's like a ape person, and they're trying to say that we evolved from that person. And the theory, like, the stuff comes from Charles Darwin and his theories, but people don't know Charles Darwin was a eugenics. No, if you look up eugenics, it was a very racist group of people who even discriminated against Eastern Europeans, other pale people like them, saying that people were inferior to, basically the whole planet was inferior to people from Western Europe. And that's his base. He used eugenics as the basis of the out of Africa theory and of the theory of evolution. So you have to really research the people and research their research and see where it's coming from.
right. Yeah, because I'm sure they're going to be in the comments asking questions about that, but that was something that was brought up.
Mm-hmm. I see someone
One
in
of the
there.
topics.
You see someone in there defending it, but
Of course, of course. But I listen. That's what this conversation is here for.
you know what?
Um,
Even if you believe in the out of Africa theory, then that would definitely give you more proof that the people who were here when the Europeans came here were so-called black people. So how the Pan Africans want to say that everyone everywhere else, even including Asia and Europe, were so-called black people, the indigenous people, except America, except the Americas, which makes absolutely no sense. If you even believe in this out of Africa theory, look how close we are to Africa. They could have got on a boat and got here before they got to Australia. So how come you claiming indigenous Australians came from Africa, but not the Americans? They weren't black, quote unquote, black people. It's not making any sense with these. The people are picking and
since
choosing, and they're not using logic.
now, since you bring that to the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
We always hear another thing we hear about is the skin color,
Mm-hmm.
the pigmentation. Um, we're from the sun. We're from the all of that, right?
Yeah.
How do you address that
And
when that comes
so those are other theories. They try to use the climate theory that it's not
climate
hot.
theory? Yeah.
But the climate in Georgia is the same as in West Africa. So how can indigenous people of Georgia not look like those people? How can the indigenous people of Brazil not look like the people right across from them? Even if you're
Hmm.
going by, I mean, you can even going by their theories, it's not making any sense. And they don't know
I
that
just
certain climates, like Canada, was tropical at one point. Canada and like
hmm.
you know, New England area, all the stuff was tropical at one point when we had human life on it. So people,
Tasha, you just making this up, Tasha.
no,
You just making this up, Tasha. Canada wasn't Canada
yes, it's
Canada
true.
wasn't tropical.
Yeah,
You just making this up.
there's actually a book about Luthea, or spelled Louisa, who is actually one of the oldest. They found another one older than her, but one of the oldest bones found in America. She was found in Brazil. In this book, they go into her and say basically she looked like a so-called black woman. So
Hmm.
if one of the most ancient bones found here looked like us, then what is that meaning? And also in that book, they were talking about they found this. It was like it wasn't like a skeleton; it was some type of fossilized remains in Canada, and within those remains, it had some type of the pieces of sickle cell. I don't know what you call them, membranes. I'm not a very science person, but they had traces of
Yeah.
sickle cell on that remain, and they said that proved that this thing had to come from a tropical environment. Now this was found in Canada, so that's more proof of
Hmm.
our oral tradition saying that Canada was tropical. So the book is called Bones. I
Wow.
can't remember what the name, but if you look up Luthia and Bones, the book, it should come back.
I mean, and I was being funny when I was saying you're making this up because that's what will be said. You're just making this up when I'm
Mhm.
saying there's this information out here for people to actually go look into, and they'll just say you're making this up, but won't go look into it and say, whoa, you're
Right,
telling the truth.
right.
Like, you
Yeah,
feel
my
what I'm
cousin
saying?
was just
So that
saying, he's just said in the Library of Congress, he saw a book that said that there's rattlesnakes in Virginia. And that's proven that they had elements of a tropical environment in Virginia. Now we know today Virginia has all four seasons. But in the past, like it's slowly the this continent slowly getting colder and colder. So when they came here,
hmm,
it was hotter than it is now.
wow,
Yeah.
wow. So it's something I want to
Thank you.
touch on, but I'm going to come back to that because I think this is what everybody's waiting on. So
Hmm.
I'm going to touch on a couple terms, right? I'm going to I'm going to bring up a couple terms
Right.
that I'm going to ask you maybe if you can explain what they mean or what they are. First term, grandma killer.
Yeah, that's the term
Can
that
you
my cousin
explain?
Phoenix Moon came up with. She's basically saying that people would take the word of a foreigner or a European over the word of their grandma. So you're basically killing your grandma off and her legacy because you're going on with somebody else's saying. So that's what I believe that's what she means about grandma killers.
Okay, okay. Now, when we hear the term Turtle Island, can you touch on or can you explain
Hmm.
Turtle Island? Um,
Okay.
why it's used or where it comes from.
Hmm.
I've heard some people speaking on Turtle Island.
Okay.
Um, you know.
Well, Turtle Island was a term that people used for the Americas at one time. They claimed that the Americas look like a turtle, but as my cousin Cheetah Paw says, Turtle Island was all the continents together in Pangea. So there was Turtle Island East and there was a Turtle Island West when they split away. It doesn't mean physically split because I don't really believe there was a physical split. Now, every indigenous culture, even the Bible, even all these other documents talk about a flood. So, from our oral history, it tells us that there was a flood over the land which separated the people. So, the land is
Mm,
still connected under. I know a lot of Pan Africans tell this tale of Africa being the only rooted continent, but that's not possible because Africa is connected to Europe and Asia. So how can Africa be? So the rest of Europe and Asia is floating, and Africa is not. No, all of the continents are rooted. That's why we have tectonic plates. That's why we have earthquakes. It's all rooted, but there's sea levels. We all know what a sea level is, right? There's areas
Mhm.
that are way below sea level. Now, there's also, if you look it up, there's a picture of these deep sea divers, and they're in the water, and they're touching a piece of land from Europe and from America. So
Mm.
that's showing you now that the land is connected under the water, right? So the
Mm.
great flood stories that all these different people had shows the separation of these different continents.
Wow. That's yeah. I never seen that. I
Yeah,
didn't even know that.
it's a picture. You guys can
Wow.
look it up. It's a picture. I wish I was able to bring it up, but there's a picture of the divers. They're touching the different, and then also they found quote unquote a piece of Africa off the coast of Georgia. So
Mm. Wow.
these are just these land plates sliding under the water. All of this is connected. We're on the same planet. People are trying to make so much division, but we're on the same piece of land, the
Same
same
planet.
planet.
Same planet. I agree. I agree. All right, so let's go into this.
But the question, I see a lot of people asking questions. It's going by so far. You said ley lines, rail. It's going by so fast. I can't.
You see something you want to? You see something you want to address in there? Because I'm not. I wasn't looking in the comments. You is there
No,
something you want to address in the
It's
comments?
going by so fast. I know you have your other phone, so you probably can see it better.
Uh,
Do y'all have any serious questions? Genealogy. You have genealogy questions as well.
that's where I was going.
Yeah.
That's exactly where we was going now. So my next question was, can you explain the difference between DNA and genealogy?
Okay.
What's the difference in what you're doing with them?
Well, if you actually go to these genealogy, I mean the genealogy sites do have DNA testing like Ancestry. If you go to the DNA pages of these sites, they will actually tell you in the details that it's for entertainment purposes only. They can't really for certain find the regions of your ancestors. Now they can connect you with cousins and find your long lost father or your uncles or whatever, but they cannot for certain find out the region because they know that they're not using the ancient DNA on these tests, and they are not accounting for migrations of the people. So they're using current people, like if you the European ancestry comes up on your test, they're using current people who live in Europe. Now, who lives in Europe now? All types of races of people live in Europe,
Right.
you know, in different
Right.
places. And then even when Europeans do these tests, they get all these crazy results that doesn't make sense. They might have genealogy and oral history saying that their whole family is Italian. Then they do a DNA test and it tells them that they're North African or they're
Right.
Irish and stuff that they didn't even hear of and is not on their genealogy. So
Right.
I had a friend who actually worked for the National Institute of Health, and she got her master's in genetics. And she had told me before when I asked her about doing a DNA test, she was saying that it's not really up to par of finding regions, and they do not use, like I said, the ancient DNA. Like if you're doing a paternity test, like you see on Maury Povich, yeah, that's fine because that's only going back one generation. If you're trying to find out where your
Okay.
people are
Got
from,
you.
it's nearly impossible, especially with those cheap kits. You would have to go and spend thousands of dollars in a lab to get any results that are decent. So,
Somebody brought up that point. Somebody
mm-hmm.
did bring up that point. They said, well, we believe in DNA when, you know, we're trying to find out who the father is, or when we're trying to get somebody out of jail or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was a good point you just mentioned.
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying? But we're not going generations back. You feel what I'm saying? So that was a great point I think you just made, because
Right.
that comes up a lot. You know, we follow, you know, we use the DNA when we want to find little certain things close, you know, close in time.
Yeah. Close
You
family
feel me?
members.
So
It's not going to find the location or region. It's not
I thought that was
that.
a good
Also,
point you just.
Dr. Fatudara, she has worked with a few people with doing DNA, and she had said that she's half was it Ghanaian? I'm about to say Guyanese. She's half Ghanaian, so her father is from West Africa. So she was saying that her test, there was something in the test that showed that marker, but with somebody else that was African American, quote unquote, it did not show that those were known markers. Like it was, I forget what she said. The tests were lit up. I think it's 23andMe she used, and going
Yeah.
by the raw DNA, it did not show. It said unknown. Now, a lot of quote unquote African Americans get large portions of their tests come back saying unknown DNA. So how do you explain that? How do they not know? People are paying their money for this, and it's
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
question marks.
I watched Sinetta last night, and some guy, I don't remember the guy, right? So I watched them go through Sinetta's. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched them go through Sinetta's DNA, right? And what threw me off, right, was I'm watching them go through this DNA, and I'm seeing them say probably, 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 probably more than anything as they're going through this DNA.
It's guesses. They're guessing.
Exactly. You feel what I'm saying? So I'm sitting here like, well, gosh, everything you say, oh, you're probably related to Ramesses, you get what I'm saying? And
Right.
you probably have a bloodline of such and such, which means you probably are in this, you know what I'm saying? Like, or from this region, and probably more than likely, you get what I'm saying? I watch this and I'm hearing probably, more than likely, this guy is trying to break down Sinetta's DNA, and I'm sitting here like, well, gosh, everything is probably, more than likely. Like, that's almost like a Christian saying believe.
Yeah,
you get what I'm saying?
exactly
Using the word believe.
That's exactly what it is. But even these people who work there will tell you that it's not for certain. There's a couple.
It's not for certain either way. Possibly, probably, it's not for certain. Either word you use.
Now there was this one,
more than likely, that's not for certain.
There's this one woman who did, a melanated woman. She did 2 DNA tests. I think one from Ancestry, one from 23andMe. Her ancestry results said she was 67 or something percent, like a high percent European, and then the other one said something totally different. Now she wrote in asking like, what's up with these results? And they were like, these results are right. These are the right results. And they were like in total denial that they were wrong. So it's like, how can you do 2 tests and come up with totally different results? Also,
did you see when they used the dog?
Yeah, that's what I was about to bring up, the dog DNA. So how can a dog be full blood, was it First Nations Canadian? It doesn't make sense. Like,
yeah.
Who are they?
They were doing it with DNA,
tests?
like, yeah, that's crazy. You guys, I'm getting ready to I'm getting ready to run a couple things by Tasha real quick. Just a couple comments that some people have said. And then I mean the questions, you guys can start with the questions. Let me run this by Tasha real quick. I'm gonna come out the chat so I can see the questions. This was a comment made by my brother LB. LB says, even family trees get distorted. I have a half brother who mom changed his last name to our last name because her baby daddy fell out. Her and her baby daddy fell out. When I was a kid, I thought it was cool until I got older and had children and gave them his last name. My brother doesn't have 1 drop of Blueford blood in him, yet his children have our last name. Then his son will grow up and he'll get married and have a wife with the last name Bluford and more children with the last name Bluford. Family trees can get distorted over time. The most accurate way for DNA, if a kid pops up saying he's my son or daughter, how can that be proven? DNA. You say you are Bluford, what he's saying about the DNA as far as finding out if this is my child. You just explained
Yeah,
that.
but if you're doing, yeah, if you're doing genealogy, his birth certificate is going to say something different. It doesn't matter what he changed his last name. Many families changed their whole families changed their last name or spelled it differently. That with that woman changing their name, that's a rare case. That doesn't happen. Also, we already talked about the DNA. You can do a DNA test. If he did a
Right.
DNA test, he would link up with people with his real surname because you can find family members with DNA, but DNA, they don't use ancient DNA, so you can't really find your ancient ancestors with it. But yeah,
So,
that's not a
um,
common case.
so genealogy.
Mm-hmm.
I know we talked about the DNA. Can you tell them? I saw somebody in the comment asking the question, "How do we do genealogy?"
Um,
They just
Genealogy.
asked that in the comments not too
Well,
long
you
ago.
can use many of those sites that we just talked. The Ancestry, you can use that. FamilySearch.com. And genealogy is basically I'm looking at definition now. It's the tracing of a bloodline of ancestors or family members that you descended from or are related to. So you're basically starting from yourself and working your way back to all of your ancestors. And your ancestors double, like you have two parents, you have four grandparents, you know, they double every generation that you go back. Um, so how you would start is the simplest way many people start is going on ancestry.com and creating a family tree. It's pretty easy. They'll ask you your personal information, ask you your parents are and who your grandparents are. And then you'll have little tablets, what are they called, leaflets pop up, and then you'll find more and more information.
Yeah.
You can also do it by hand if you print out a pedigree chart. I know it sounds like dogs, but that's not. Pedigree means like the different, what you descend from. That's how they use for dogs.
Right. Right.
It's
Right.
it's basically brackets. Y'all know how to do the final four brackets. It's basically brackets like that.
Right.
You
Yep.
write your name, you
Yep.
write your parents on the bracket, you write their parents on the bracket, and go back as far as you can. Then that's when you can go and research. There's a lot of digital files now. You can actually go to the courthouse where those people are from and pull up land records, different records that will give you clues on who they're related to. All the census records from 17, a good percent of them from 1790 until probably 1950
Um,
is available online.
the
And
sister, Kristen Ballou asked a question. She said, "So, who is the most accurate company to go to
for DNA results,
for DNA, Kristen, or for genealogy?"
now for genealogy,
I'm
you
not
can
sure.
use anyone. Ancestry charges, I think, 19 a month, or you can get the bulk plan. Family Search is free. Many libraries also have the library edition of Ancestry.com for free, but you will have to email yourself the results, the documents that you find on there.
So what do you how what all do she said for both?
For both, I would start with Ancestry for genealogy and 23andMe for DNA. Now, with the DNA, you can use the raw results and go on a website called GEDmatch. I've had a few cousins find each other on GEDmatch. GEDmatch will match your raw DNA with actual family members who are in the database, and they have their email or contact information. You can email them and get their phone numbers, and a lot of people find more information about their family that way. Some people find out that they aren't, just like the young man, they aren't descended from the people that they thought were their family. Maybe they have a different father, or They find out that these people are their aunt and not their, their real mother and father, their aunt and uncle. So you can actually find people with the DNA, like close relatives. Regional is not accurate. You're not going to find regional ancestors with a $59 DNA kit. That's not going to happen. It's not even, they don't even have the ancient DNA in the database. So even if you're paying more with the 23andMe, which I believe is $199, they're using the same type of database as the $59 one. So if you want to save money, get the $59 kit and then upload the raw results to gedmatch.com to find actual cousins that can help you.
Gotcha. So you said family search for genealogy. Family search.
FamilySearch.org is free. It's the Mormons provide that service. I think they also have something to do with Ancestry.com. But Ancestry.com has more information, especially the library edition. So to save your money, you can, if your library has that service, I will go to the library. Make an Ancestry.com with the 14-day free trial just to make your tree. And even if you're not paying monthly, you can still log on, even if you're not paying after the trial goes off. And you can still use the documents that you find in the library and email it to yourself and add those to your tree.
Yeah, I definitely liked Family Search. We went on Family Search, man. We went back in our family. Like we went like 4 directions. This person had kids and that person had kids, and we went everywhere in that family, like on both sides of the family. You feel what I'm saying? I really like that. It showed us their classifications. That, like I was saying, like I was telling the brother how our fourth grandmother had a passport. It showed us all of that. You feel what I'm saying? The brother saying that they didn't have passports back then. Yes, they did.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, they did, bro.
The only thing about those sites that I say is you can't 100% trust the trees that people already made. You're going to have to go through and prove them right. I've had a couple instances that I had tried to add stuff from other people's tree that was wrong. And then some of the times people are lazy and they don't go back as far as they can. There's other information and other ancestors that you could find. So especially, on Family Search, and I think it's another, I forget what the other name, Jenny, I think it's called GENI.com. Jenny.com has a lot of fake trees, and there's a lot of people who are claiming to be like related to Pocahontas, for example, and other people who are really just European people trying to connect to these families because I guess they think they're going to get some benefits or whatever from it. All those trees are not correct. So you're going to have to go and find the actual evidence of these people. Now, Pocahontas has, and maybe other people, I know for sure for Pocahontas, she has actually genealogy books, which a lot of people don't realize that there's actually family books by your surnames that you can look up and find your family tree on to connect.
Yeah.
So, and then some of them are out of print and they're hard to find, but then there's others that are in the library and you can go find.
Yeah, that's I mean, I really like that, man. And like my cousin was saying, he made that tree himself from our family. You know what I'm saying? We got all the names. I even had some people from my some of my older cousins. They got our names and stuff together as far back as we could go. My cousin got in on it, man. Everybody was going in on the family, but it was very intriguing to see, man, like we went through the family and you're looking at pictures of people who look just like you, different pigmentation. You feel what I'm saying? It was I'm talking about our grandmother down the line, light skinned, but our actual grandmother was dark skinned, like, but they look just alike. I mean, we're looking at everything from like, wow. Then we're just looking at how the families branched off, like, and
Right.
how they ended up in Virginia and how they ended up in Ohio and how they
Mhm.
ended up, you feel what I'm saying? It was telling us all of this.
Yep, you're
And
gonna learn
that's what I
so
was saying. We
much.
didn't have a
Mhm.
slave in our family.
Exactly. And that's where you got to learn that when you're doing the genealogy, you got to learn the background history as well so you can understand why people are doing certain jobs. Like if you have ancestors from North Carolina, some of them moved from North Carolina to Georgia because of the turpentine factories, different things. And a lot of those people are American Indians that worked in the turpentine factories. It's different,
Yeah.
you got to have that's sometimes you might need the help of someone who has the genealogy background because they know the history as well. If you're doing genealogy, you have to know a little bit of history at the very least, um, to put the pieces together. And also I wanted to say that you can't just be adding people to the tree when you don't have proof. It's like your cousin said, you have
Right.
the census records and you have passports. There's a lot of people who are just adding names because they see it on another tree. It's
Right.
best. I mean, you can add them now for reference, but it's best to go back and find people on the census that they're connected to as family members.
Right. Yeah, I'm reading my cousin's comments in the post, and he's telling, like, how Steve Harvey is our direct bloodline. He's,
Hmm.
I'm saying, like, my grandmother and his father, all of it, that's our direct bloodline. So it wasn't hard for us to find out a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um, you feel what I'm saying? He was saying, Steve Harvey, proof how Steve Harvey is our dad's. Um, Steve Harvey's dad is our great grandmother's brother. You feel what I'm saying? Like,
Okay.
we found out, like, all of this stuff is in our going through our family tree. We found all of this stuff.
Hmm.
You get what I'm saying? And we're watching everything branch by branch, branch by branch. So, Tasha, that's what I'm kind of telling everybody. Like,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? We know everything about Egypt.
Hmm.
We know everything about the pharaohs. We know everything about, what I'm saying, everything else over there. But then when I ask you about your family, you can't tell me nothing about your own family.
They should be able to
That's
find who's African on the census or on these records. They should be able to find the ship records or passports if they were more
but
recent.
they're not going to go look for that, Tasha. That's what I'm saying. This is the point I'm making about some of us claim we want truth, but we
Hmm.
don't really want truth.
Right. Right.
And that's why I made the post on my page. How would you actually feel if you found out you are not African?
Hmm.
What would that do to you? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not bashing anybody. This is all I'm trying to do is get people to think. Ask yourself questions. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Right. Right. Right.
I'm going to shut him up. Let me shut him up. You get what I'm saying? But
Hmm.
Tasha, I wanted to ask you this before we get out of here, right?
Right.
You just brought this up, and I wanted to see if you could touch on this a little bit more.
Hmm.
The census.
Hmm.
The census that's coming back around. Can you
2020.
tell us
Right.
why it's important that we need to find out who we are?
I mean, there's a lot of things with the census that they talk about. There's a lot of things that they're not talking about. Some people do believe that if you're claiming to be from somewhere else, that they're going to be deporting you. You already see the current president trying to deport a lot of people. Also, it has to do with tribals funding as well. If you're claiming a certain tribe, um, it has to do. It's a lot of things that's important with the census. Dealing with roads, different things, and you want to be documented right because just like
You
you're
want to
going,
be documented right.
if you just like you're going back and doing your genealogy on your family, somebody's going to go back and do their genealogy on you. You're going to be ancestor one day, so it's best
Right.
to get it right because they've gotten a lot wrong. We know a lot of our ancestors who were American Indian documented as Negro, mulatto, sometimes white on the census. They weren't allowed the benefit of being put down correctly, right?
Hmm.
So you have
Hmm.
that option now to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and that's what I'm saying. We got to get it right. It's somebody was asking me, what, I mean, what does it matter? What, that type of thing. And my thing is this. I'm going to teach my children who they are.
Yeah, it matters a lot, your heritage. It gives people a sense of pride
Yes,
as well. I mean, the Pan Africans are proud to be African. That's fine, but find out what tribe. Africa's just not like a blanket place. Find out the
right,
tribe, find out the language they spoke, so you can go do that too. The people here,
right,
we have land and things that are our ancestors. Some people still have unclaimed land, unclaimed bank accounts from the Freeman Bureau or other places that are out here, and people don't even know because they don't know who their ancestors are. You
yeah.
know.
So the brother, real quick, the brother J. Carl says, your genealogy is the tracking of names.
Mm-hmm.
But when the names stop and the new names begin, how do you make the connection?
Usually the people will have the same first name on the census. I had a client. He gave me the census for people who had the last name Lockley on it. I found a connection with the whole family with the same first names on it in a different state with the last name Locklear on it. It sounds similar, it's spelled different. It's the same name. Just like you have like Maggie and Margaret. Those are the same. That's the same person. That's the same name. So that's how you make the connection by tracing all of the family members, not just one. Usually everybody's going to move together. It's going to be similar names. Similar names. So they have
Okay.
the birth dates on there. They might say from North Carolina or wherever that they're from. You said so.
Yeah.
There's no paper genocide. Yeah, there was paper genocide, but that wasn't their choice. Paper genocide was done by vital statistics and a lot of the state records. No, paper genocide would not
Yeah.
erase the name connection. Paper genocide will erase the race connection. They changed many
Okay.
people's races. Even people born on reservations were changed to mulatto. And I have an ancestor who was born on the Mattaponi Reservation, and all her information says mulatto on it, but she was not
Hmm.
biracial. She was not mixed.
I think we saw that on our in ours too. They
Mm-hmm.
use homes and territories. I think we saw that on ours too. The sister Amanda, she asked a question. She said, if you don't or can't seem to have or find proof before 2020, what do you do then?
Um, it's not. I don't believe it's life and death. Just keep doing the best that you can to find this information. Now that we're in the digital age, is a little different. You don't have to go to courthouse or to state archives. You can literally get on the internet and find out a lot of this information. Like I said, ancestry.com is probably the easiest site, and just like you were saying, familysearch.org is an easy site as well. There's other sites that have information. You can go on the National Archive website. There's actually a good website for quote unquote African American and indigenous people called freeafricanamericans.com. Now, all the people on that site are not quote unquote African Americans. He distinguished some of them as being Indian families. Many of them are Indian families that are not distinguished on it, but all of these families were free people of color. And many people are finding their ancestors, including myself, on that website. Now it's really a volumes. I think it's 3-volume book that costs like $100 each. But he was generous enough to put the information on the internet for free, and he's constantly updating the information. They have free Negro registers from when they first came out, and those give you a lot of clues. And you'll see that these people are landowners. Some of these people owned slaves themselves. These people weren't
Right.
enslaved people. They have court cases, people representing themselves as court. Some of the people were formerly enslaved, and they were intelligent enough to represent themselves in court. Now, you can't, Roots and all the stuff act like people were illiterate and stupid. And these
Yeah.
people were intelligent. They were confident enough to go in a courtroom as a enslaved person and represent themselves in court and actually win cases. Everyone,
Hmm.
if you actually read these documents, you see that this nonsense that everyone was so oppressed. And I'm not saying people weren't. I'm saying that how can a slave go in court? How can they take time off of their work? A lot of y'all can't even take off of work nowadays. How can an enslaved person take off of work and put together a court case, represent themselves in court, and win the case? If everybody was so, racist and redneck, how can a quote unquote European person say, okay, this person's a slave, but they're right, I'm gonna grant them the win? You know what I'm saying? So you got to know, like,
Right.
roots and all that stuff was totally false. I'm not saying that
Yeah.
that person
But a
wasn't
lot of
working
us, but a
hard.
lot of us
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that. A lot of us, we didn't know that. We didn't
Mm-hmm.
know roots of false.
Yeah. And
I didn't know that until my adulthood.
actually,
I,
his book was not even real. It was based on a European's man book called The African.
right,
It's a fictional novel.
right,
It's based on a fictional novel called The African. If you go look for Roots
right.
now, I used to work at a bookstore. Roots is in the fiction section of the bookstore. It's not real. Virginia genealogists
Yeah.
actually came together and did his genealogy, and they proved that everyone in his story didn't exist except his Cherokee grandmother. So if everybody's
Wow.
African, how come Alex Haley, who told y'all African, the only real person in his stories was his Cherokee grandmother?
Wow.
So it's
That's
not making
crazy.
sense. She's the only one they
So I
actually
see a
found real
conversation.
documentation on.
There's a conversation going on in the chat. It's stemming from Jay Carl's question where he says, "What happened to your family's Indian names then?"
Well, like I said, dealing with Christianity, a lot of people got Christian names. Some people got names from when they traded. So if you have to go to court or you have to do any type of business, you needed a first and a surname. So you had some people, they might have been friends with a European person and took on that surname, or they created a name that was similar to their tribal clan name or whatever. Like a lot of indigenous people created the name Brown. I'm from one of the Brown families. Those, a lot of them from Bear Clan or whatever, like a brown bear or whatever. That's how a lot of people got their names. Or maybe they're friends with John Smith and they're like, oh, he has a cool name. So next time they go to court, they're going to say their name is Adam Smith or whatever. People had,
Yeah.
and the American Indians are known to have several names as well. If you look up the chief of the Nottoway, her name was like Vrena Rue in her language, but she went by Edith Turner. And she was actually the one who protected Nat Turner and his family, which the name connection is kind of, you got to look into that a little more. Like, why do they have the same surname? But that's just how people did business.
Okay.
They used that European name for business and, as their Christian name.
I see.
Mm.
Okay, so listen. I ain't gonna hold you up all day, man. Like I think this is a dope little a dope conversation. Let me just ask them in the comments right quick. Does anybody have any other genealogy questions for Tasha before we get off?
Right. Your cousin said
I
they had
just wanna
names like carpenter with their profession. Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah, because Jay is
That's
asking,
true.
so at some point your Indian
Right.
names ended and your Christian names began, correct?
Right.
So he's answering off of those.
You said
So
Indians basically committed paper genocide on themselves. What they did was assimilate. It was for protection. They had to assimilate. You had to assimilate, or you were the enemy. Correct. So the people who didn't assimilate became slaves. They were captured in these wars, or they just basically kidnapped, as you see on 12 Years a Slave. The man was just kidnapped and became a slave, which they were doing until the 1800s. You either assimilated or you became a slave, and then you were forced to assimilate. So it was basically get down or lay down. Basically, use the street terms. He said they.
so his question is if his question what he's saying is if everyone changed their names, how can you use genealogy to track your family?
Many of these people gained their Christian names or their business names in the late 1600s, early 1700s, and the genealogy, the census records, and a lot of the records didn't start until 1790. So there's a long time period to be documented. Enslaved people as well had to take on, some of them didn't have surnames. Some of them had their own surname, and that's, another myth that we get from Pan-Africans, that this is my slave name, I got to change. No, these families, they might have been enslaved by the Winston family, but their last name was Smith. So it could be like Peter Smith was worked on, he lived on the Winston plantation, but he had his own name and he had his own identity. Many slaves did
Okay.
have surnames.
Someone's asking, are there any pointers? Are there any pointers on how to prove documents are your ancestors? Suggested records. Hold on. Any pointers on how to prove documents are your ancestors? The suggested records. Do you understand the question?
No, I don't understand.
I'm not sure. Any pointers on how to prove documents are you?
Oh, like I said, with the census records, you will be able to line up the family members. They have to have the same family members. They have to be around the same age range. Now, all of them are not perfect. They can get birth dates or estimate. Most of them have estimated birthdays because the census workers are looking at people and they're making guesses. So they might look at a person and guess their race, they guess their age, or they can ask them this question. Sometimes people don't know, so they would have to just put whatever on the page.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm saying it right.
Yeah. And Demetrius is asking, is there any way that you can trace your roots without the government finding out?
I don't understand. Most of this is government vital records that you're looking at. Like I said, there's genealogy books with family records with your family genealogy in it for some certain families. I don't think the government's sitting around looking at who's researching. Unless you're going to like the National Archives, you have to get it. If you go to National Archives or the Library of Congress, you do have to get an ID made, but they're just doing that because they don't want people to steal books. They want to know who's in the library. In case somebody.
I want to ask you about that too. Mm-hmm. The National Archives, are they the same everywhere?
No.
I have a National Archives right here.
Right.
And I wanted to take some people with me to the National Archives. Will we find the same information in any National Archives we go to, or?
No, some of them have replicas of the, copies of the information. I believe the one in DC and Maryland have most of the official documents. I would call them beforehand and ask them that question. But they do have a lot of information and they do have access to help you with, doing some genealogy stuff. A lot of these archives have a staff genealogist. They might not be, somebody that's volunteering, usually an elderly person that's volunteering to help people. So they might not be the most savvy, especially dealing with our type of genealogy, but they'll, be there to give you kind of a little bit tips and things. When I went there, I know, they really didn't help me much when I went to the one in DC because I already know pretty much a lot of stuff, but I was playing dumb, and they really didn't. They really didn't know that much. So.
Yeah, I found out we have one right here. Like I'm one exit away from a National Archives in Morrow, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta. So I didn't know. I just wanted to get some people because I knew there were people here who have questions and who have been watching, what we've been posting and talking about, and there's been questions. And I was thinking hey man, maybe we take a weekend and we go to the National Archives and we look things up. We just all get together and make this trip together. So also I remember my cousin was doing a lot of he was getting a lot of information from National Archives outside of America.
Yeah. They have a lot of information. They do, and the archives probably does have access to the free library version of Ancestry.com too. So you probably, you're going to get something out of going there. It's not going to be like a total waste of time. And like I said, they probably have a staff genealogist there to help. They're only going to do so much. They're just going to kind of assist. They're not going to do the genealogy for you. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, listen, man. I enjoyed you.
mhm,
I thank you for coming on. I'm not gonna hold you up, hold your day up.
mhm,
But if we, if I think if people found this to be an informative live, man, maybe more so on my side.
yeah,
Maybe we should do it again. If it's something they were interested in.
right.
Um, I know a lot of people come behind the scenes and
Mhm.
they ask um, asking questions and things like that because then
Mhm.
people start looking at them funny and things like that. I've already heard the comments about I don't know if it was about me or not, but
Oh no.
about people flip flopping
Mhm.
type thing. I
Mhm.
don't know if that was about me or not, but I'm not gonna worry about it. But
Yeah.
I think if this was very informative to people, I didn't want to come on here and have a debate with people.
Mhm.
Um, I wanted to be able to come on and just put some information out here because a lot of us we
Mhm.
just follow what people are telling us.
Right.
You feel what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
you'll still have people who will leave this live right here and say, she don't know what she's talking about. She just making stuff up. Instead of
Verify.
going to find the information that she's
Exactly.
telling you
I'm
about.
telling y'all where to
You'll
look.
rather say
Mhm.
she don't know what she's talking about or insult, send insults instead of refuting the information,
Right.
and seeing what she's talking about. So, you know, hey, listen, I appreciate you, Tasha, man. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you guys.
Um,
I mean, I ask questions. I mean, I ask people to ask me questions all the time on my YouTube channel as well. It's the same as my name on here. Y'all can find me on here too if y'all have any questions on YouTube.
yes, definitely subscribe to Tasha's YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling y'all, I went on her YouTube channel and I got stuck. I got
Mm-hmm.
stuck and I loved it. I didn't even know she had a YouTube channel. Tasha's been on my page for a minute. And a lot of this is me just really starting to speak out on this
Mm-hmm.
because I was dealing a lot with religion at
Right.
the time. You feel what I'm saying? But
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like I'm moving in another direction, and some of us really need to start just listen, whether you're African or not, listen, at least find out.
Yes.
Don't just follow what somebody's telling you, at
Mm-hmm.
least go find out.
Right.
We took the time to go find out. We went through our family to go find out. Hey, listen, I love people. I love people. You feel what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you can't keep telling me who I am and who
Right.
I'm not. You feel what I'm saying? So that's basically our issue, man. But Tasha, I thank you, man. And hey, maybe we can do this again if
Yeah.
if,
Yeah. Sure.
if they ask for it.
All right.
Trust me, they'll let me know. They'll come in my inbox and let
Mm-hmm.
me know. So
Yeah.
you guys, you wanna say anything before we get off, Tasha?
I think I covered everything pretty much. I'm just saying, you guys got to do your own individual genealogy to know who you are. You can't be going by these blanket terms. I mean, like you said before, it's the same thing with, we went through with religion and other things in the past, just going on belief. You got to know. This is the age of knowing right now. So you got to know,
Yeah,
you got to
definitely.
research everything. Everything I'm saying, I want y'all to go back and research it. Look up the books that I mentioned. Look at the websites I mentioned. You see all that
Yeah.
information that I said on there. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to just believe. You're supposed to know and find out for yourself.
That's right, Tasha. That's
Mm-hmm.
right. I'm all the way with you on that one. And I mean, this is the same thing we were saying about religion.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all don't want to know. Y'all just want to believe. You feel what I'm saying? And all I'm just asking you is, what do you know about your own family, man? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can tell me everything about everything else, but when I ask you about your family, you don't know. Listen, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know. You feel what I'm saying? I didn't know about my own family. Remember, I said I was ignoring my own grandmother.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? I heard her. I heard her.
Yeah, me too.
I heard her. But in school, I'm being taught this every day. Every day. I have social studies class every day.
And we
You feel
already
what I'm
went over
saying?
that. They don't tell you that Roots was based on a fictional novel. He got sued in
No, they
court and
don't.
he lost and he had to pay the guy who
And
wrote
some of
the
us,
fictional novel. Right.
many of us had to watch Roots in school.
Yep.
You get what I'm saying? So I mean, so this is all we saying, you guys, man. I love you guys, man. Tasha, thank you so much
Thank
again,
you.
man. I'm gonna get out
Thanks
of
a
here,
lot.
man, and we'll talk after this, Tasha.
Okay.
And all right, talk to you later, Tasha. Peace, everybody.
Peace.